The sound that woke me wasn't just a car engine, it was a scream of metal pushed far past its limits, the kind of roar you hear right before something catastrophic happens. I stumbled to the window, heart pounding, only to see my Mustang, me carefully restored 1969, fastback tearing down the street like a bat out of hell. Behind the wheel, laughing with a cigarette dangling from his mouth, was no stranger. It was Ethan, the spoiled teenage son of our HOA president, Karen. For a heartbeat, my mind refused to process what I was seeing. That car was supposed to be locked in my garage. That boy wasn't supposed to have the keys. Yet there it was, my pride and joy, swerving across the cul-de-sac while neighbors screamed and leapt out of the way. My wife's voice rang out behind me, panicked and trembling. "Is that your car?" Before I could answer, the inevitable happened. The Mustang skidded, fishtailed, and slammed nose first into a maple tree at the corner of the block. The crunch echoed like thunder, glass scattering across the asphalt, smoke rising from the hood. My knees went weak. Years of work, money, memories all destroyed in a single reckless joyride. I sprinted out, my chest heaving, but before I could reach the wreck, Karen herself stormed onto the scene. Her son stumbled out of the driver's seat, dazed but grinning like a fool, and she rushed to his side, wrapping her arms around him as though he were the victim. "Are you hurt, baby?" she cried, her voice dripping with false drama. Then she turned on me, her eyes blazing with arrogance. "You should be ashamed of yourself, leaving such a dangerous car unlocked. My son could have been killed." The words sliced through the crowd. Neighbors gasped, some shaking their heads, others filming with wide eyes. I felt my blood boil. The car wasn't just a vehicle, it was my father's legacy, the car he'd left me before he passed. And now this woman had the audacity to twist it into our fault? I bit back the rage and pulled out my phone. Locked garage. Security cameras. Let's see what really happened. Karen's smirk faltered. Within minutes, I had pulled up the footage on the tablet I kept in the house. Ethan sneaking across my lawn, using a crowbar to pop the side door of the garage, fumbling through drawers until he found the keys, then starting the engine with a roar of victory. The crowd gasped again as the footage played back, crystal clear, the boy's face illuminated in the garage light. I turned the screen toward Karen, my voice sharp. "Your son didn't borrow my car. He stole it." Karen sputtered, her face turning crimson. "That's a lie. You doctored this. You've always been against my family." But her words were drowned out by another voice, Officer Ruiz, who had pulled up quietly in his cruiser while the footage was playing. He stepped forward, arms crossed. "I've seen enough. Ma'am, your son committed grand theft auto, property damage, and reckless endangerment. This isn't a neighborly dispute anymore. This is a crime." Karen shrieked, clutching her son tighter, but Ruiz wasn't finished. "And if you don't want to make it worse, I suggest you stop interfering." The neighbors erupted in murmurs, some clapping softly, others whispering in awe. The mighty HOA president, suddenly powerless in the face of the law. But then came the twist nobody expected. From the edge of the crowd, Mrs. Lee, one of the quietest residents, a woman Karen had fined repeatedly for her front porch decoration, stepped forward with her phone raised. "I have footage too," she said softly. She showed a clip from her Ring camera across the street. It not only confirmed Ethan breaking into my garage, but also captured Karen herself earlier that evening handing him a beer and bragging to her friends that my boy will show this neighborhood who really runs it. The silence that followed was deafening. Karen's face collapsed into something between shock and panic. Her son muttered curses under his breath, his bravado finally cracking. Officer Ruiz didn't hesitate. He radioed for backup, and soon both Karen and her son were in handcuffs, her shrieks echoing down the block as she accused everyone of betrayal. My Mustang sat mangled and smoking, a symbol of everything I had lost in minutes. But in that same moment, as neighbors cheered and filmed, I realized it was also becoming the symbol of Karen's downfall. The courthouse overflowed with people on the day of the trial. It wasn't just a hearing, Anna Marie, it had become the reckoning our neighborhood had waited for. Neighbors who once ducked their heads when Karen walked by now filed into the gallery, eager to see justice land squarely on the woman who had ruled with intimidation and fines. Reporters crowded outside, microphones buzzing, headlines already spinning the scandal. HOA president's son steals Mustang. Family faces grand theft and fraud charges. Karen arrived in a tailored suit, Her hair lacquered into place, trying desperately to look untouchable. Her son, Ethan, shuffled beside her, eyes darting nervously but still trying to cling to that smug grin he wore the night of the crash. Their lawyer spun a narrative of teenage mischief and misunderstood community leadership, painting Karen as a mother under pressure, forced into decisions she never intended. But as soon as the first piece of evidence played the footage from my garage, showing Ethan prying open the side door with a crowbar, the courtroom gasped. The smirk slid right off his face. Then came Mrs. Lee's footage. The jury leaned forward as her Ring camera showed Karen bragging to her friends about how her son would teach the neighborhood a lesson. That wasn't negligence, it was premeditation. My wife squeezed my hand as I took the stand, voice steady but thick with emotion. I told the court what that car meant, not just steel and paint, but years of restoration, a promise to my late father, the last bond we shared. I told them about Ethan's laughter as he wrecked it, Karen's insults as my wife wept by the crumpled hood, and the lies they spun in the aftermath. By the time I finished, even the judge's face was tight with disgust. But the most unexpected twist came when a man stood up in the back row. He was middle-aged, his suit slightly wrinkled, and his hands shook as he addressed the court. "I used to be Karen's accountant," he said. "I can't stay silent anymore." The judge allowed him to speak, and what he revealed turned the trial upside down. For years, Karen had been embezzling HOA funds to cover her family's expenses, vacations, cars, even the very lawyer now defending her. He had records, bank transfers, invoices, all neatly documented. It wasn't just theft of a car, Anna Maria, it was theft from an entire community. The prosecution seized the opportunity. They tied Karen's son's stolen SUV, used in the crash, directly to HOA accounts. They revealed the fines collected from neighbors had never gone toward community upkeep, but into Karen's personal spending. One neighbor, Mrs. Carter, nearly cried as she learned the money she had paid under threat of lien had gone to fund Ethan's gaming system. The courtroom turned against Karen completely. When it was her turn to testify, Karen's mask cracked. She tried blaming her son, blaming me, blaming stress. She screamed that the neighborhood was ungrateful and that she had sacrificed for us. But every word dug her hole deeper. The jury's eyes were cold. The judge leaned back, unimpressed. It was the look of someone watching a woman self-destruct. The verdict came swift and merciless. Guilty on charges of grand theft auto, fraud, embezzlement, and reckless endangerment. Her son was sentenced to a youth correctional program, ordered to perform community service and pay restitution once he turned 18. But Karen herself faced years in prison. The judge's words rang like a hammer. "You abused your authority, you corrupted your role, and you endangered lives. This community deserves better." The gavel slammed, and it was done. Neighbors erupted into applause, their cheers echoing down the courthouse halls. Karen collapsed into her chair, mascara streaking, her son pale and trembling as deputies cuffed them both. The empire she had built on lies and intimidation crumbled in a single afternoon, the neighborhood finally free. Back home, the wrecked Mustang was gone, towed away as evidence. For weeks, I couldn't even look at the empty driveway without a knot tightening in my chest. But then something extraordinary happened. The community, once fractured, came together with a unity I had never seen before. Mr. Jenkins offered his workshop to help rebuild. Mrs. Lee donated funds she had received from Karen's restitution. A local auto shop, hearing the story from the news, volunteered labor free of charge. Piece by piece, part by part, the Mustang was reborn, not exactly the same as before, but stronger, infused with the sweat and spirit of an entire neighborhood. The day it rolled back into my driveway was like watching a phoenix rise. The chrome gleamed in the sunlight, the engine purred smooth and proud, and my wife cried tears of joy as she slid into the driver's seat. Children clapped, neighbors cheered, and for the first time in years, our street felt alive again. The Mustang had become more than a carrot, was a symbol of resilience, of truth triumphing over arrogance, of a community reclaiming itself from fear. That evening, under string lights strung between porches, we held a block party. Music played, kids ran barefoot, food lined long tables, and laughter filled the air. My wife raised her glass, her voice carrying above the hum. "This isn't just about a car. It's about us. We stood up. We fought back. and we proved that no bully can steal what we build together. The cheer that followed was thunderous, heartfelt. Even Officer Ruiz showed up, off-duty, smiling as he leaned against his cruiser, nodding in quiet approval. Karen thought her son's theft would leave us broken. She thought lawsuits and lies would keep us silent. But all she did was expose her own corruption and light the fire that burned her empire down. And as I stood there, watching the convertible gleam under the stars, I realized we hadn't just beaten Corinne, we had reclaimed our dignity. So I'll leave you with this question. When power is abused and arrogance destroys trust, is prison time enough? Or should communities find their own ways to ensure people like Karen can never rise again?